Okay, all right. Yeah. Good afternoon. If everyone can find a seat, we'll start the meeting. Got a lot of members. All right, welcome everyone. This is the Space Coast TPO Governing Board meeting, and today is February 13th, 2025, and we're calling this meeting to order. Please join me in the pledge. Pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Hoorah!
I didn't see Rob. All right, Zoe, would you please conduct a roll call to confirm a quorum?
Yes. Okay. Atkinson. Present. Altman. Here. Allender. Blake.
Present, ma'am.
Capizzi. Here. Cole. Here. Connors. Here. Delaney. Here. Feltner. Here. Forrester. Here. Foy. Goodson. Hammer.
Present.
Hanley. Jaffe.
Here.
Johnson. Kennedy. Smith.
Here.
And Young.
Here.
And then we are good on alternates. We're good on quorum.
All right, thank you very much, Zoe. Anyone wishing to make a comment on an item not on the agenda should complete the speaker card at the sign-in desk. For items on the agenda, please fill out a speaker card and you will be called upon when the item is discussed. Comments are limited to 3 minutes. And at this time, members of the public are invited to offer general comments unrelated to the agenda item. Public comments related to the agenda item will be heard following staff presentation of the item. Do we have any public comments on non-agenda item? Thank you very much, Zoe. We'll go over to reports. All right, Jordana.
Yes, well, it's very good to see everyone. I think many of you have heard that our attorney, Mr. Paul Gugelman, who has been the TPO's attorney for 31 years, he passed away last week, and we knew that Paul was not feeling well and he had been sick, but it's still a shock because he was always there. And so he was a friend and a mentor to the TPO family, and I just know that he would always say, "More to come." That's what he would always say. So, Madam Chair, did you want to say anything as well?
Yes, I would. I have known Paul for quite a while. On all the boards that I serve on, or many of the other boards, I should say, Paul is always to my right. I call on him for many things. I can pick up the phone at any time, and while he's giving me advice, we're having a good laugh. And his advice was always sincerely at the top of my list, and I'm grateful for him forever. He never hesitated to help, to step in. Anyone that ever needed Paul was always there. He had the answer. He was the most dedicated public servant probably in the history of Brevard. I did some searching. Actually, I asked my city clerk to help me, as we all do. And we found out that he first appeared before West Melbourne City Council in February of 1989, 36 years ago. Oh my gosh. At that time, he was representing Amoco on their request to develop within our town. And of course, that application passed. It was good development, but also Paul had provided the council at that time, 36 years ago, with all the information that they needed to make the correct decision at that time. Following his appearance before our council, he was the land use attorney and became the city attorney for Melbourne, City of Melbourne, and for Indialantic as well. We benefit from his expertise because he did such a good job for the entire county. He didn't simply work for one community. He made sure he served all of us. When Paul Gugelman spoke, we all listened because we all trusted him to lead us in the right direction, and we will truly miss Paul and his passing that certainly left a void in Brevard County. I'd like to have just a moment of silence for Paul before we move on with the rest of the reports. So thank you. Thank you. Georgiana, do you want to continue on with the reports?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. The only other thing I wanted to mention, we do have our 2024 Perfect Attendance Awards, and I do have certificates. We always give these awards to our Technical and Citizen Advisory Committee, and they really enjoy it. And so we've tended to extend that to the TPO board members. We know that you guys wear a lot of hats, and so for you to be here, needless to say, we very much appreciate it. And so I do have the certificates, Commissioner Feltner, Councilmember Hanley, Mayor Young, and Councilmember Willis. And so we can take a photograph after the meeting is over. And in your package, you have the public engagement report from Abby from January and February of this year, and also the TPO project status and updates, as well as our quarterly fiscal year 24 operating budget. So that is the report, Madam Chair.
All right, thank you. You'll notice that you don't have page numbers on your agenda, so I've looked them all up, and I'll give you the page numbers as we get to the item.
Yes, so our apologies. We have a new peak program that we are implementing, and so our agendas, it does not allow you to put page numbers on the agenda. We've always had page numbers, and so this is kind of new for us and a little difficult, so we apologize for that.
So the next item is the Technical and Citizens Advisory Committee's report, page 10.
All right, the TAC-CAC met on Monday, and you have the draft summary of actions at your place, and the TAC-CAC approved all of the action items. They heard the member orientation as well as the DOT work program and the Turnpike tentative work program presentation. So that is the report, Madam Chair.
Thank you. The Bicycle, Pedestrian, and Trails Advisory Committee, Sarah, and that's page 17.
Good afternoon, Sarah Crom, Senior Transportation Planner. The Bicycle and Pedestrian Trails Advisory Committee met on January 27th. They elected this year's officers, received a presentation of the 2019 Bicycle and Pedestrian Master Plan Progress Report. The progress report can be found on page 18 within your agenda package. This is kind of a snapshot of some of the work that we've been doing to advance the Bicycle and Pedestrian Master Plan, as well as also they received a demonstration of our State of the System dashboard. I'd also like to draw your attention to pages 19 and 20. 19 is our North Merritt Island Pioneer Trail Feasibility Study update, and if you go down to the bottom, we have 2 public workshops coming up, one on March 26th that will be at the Moose Lodge, and the other one will be virtually on April 1st. Then on page 20, we have 2 workshops listed for our Southern Brevard Trails Master Plan. There will be an in-person one held on February 25th at Grant-Volcaria Town Hall, and then a virtual lunch and learn on March 4th, and so that will obviously be held virtually. And that concludes my report.
Thank you, Sarah. Thank you, Georgiana. The next item is the Transportation Disadvantaged Local Coordinating Board. That's Terry Jordan, and that is on page 21.
Good afternoon, everyone. Terry Jordan, Space Coast Area Transit Director. The Transportation Disadvantaged Local Coordinating Board met on Monday, February 3rd. Action items that took place were the election of a vice chair for the new fiscal year, and the approval of which now includes frequently asked questions on specific pages, along with AI conversations. So if you tab on a page, you can not only read what the page is discussing, but also now hear it. So that's something we're looking forward to, having our patrons have the ability to get the information much more expeditiously and understand what's going on without having to read the entire page. Those are updates that were given. Next planned meeting of the local coordinating board is to take place on May 12th If there are any questions, glad to answer them at this time.
Any questions for Terry?
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Thank you, Terry. Next is the Florida Department of Transportation, Chuck Coppernoll, page 22.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair, members of the board. I'm Chuck Coppernoll with Florida Department of Transportation. In the interest of time, I'm going to defer the FDOT report to the work program presentation that will be coming up shortly. And I would just like to mention that the most recent construction report is in your agenda packet, and so I would like to open the floor to any questions.
Any questions for Mr. Coppernoll from FDOT? Ms. Atkinson?
Madam Chair, I don't actually have a question, and I think this is the right spot for me to address this. May I?
Yes, please.
You all should have a letter, a draft letter, in your packets. I'm sorry I didn't get it to you before. You should also have some state legislation about the Barrier Island area of critical concern. So it came to my attention through emails and phone calls from my constituents that an FDOT project was underway, and they had some concerns about it. And so we started to look into it, and we realized that this happened before I was elected. It also happened before the state legislation came out. So if I may just read some of the state legislation to you real quick. It says, the state, regional, and local agencies and units of government in the Brevard Barrier Island area shall coordinate their plans and conduct their programs and regulatory activities to be consistent with all of the following guidelines, principles for development within the area. And one of those guidelines is enhancing the natural scenic resources to promote the aesthetic benefits of the natural environment. So we understand that there is a definite need down in this particular area for pedestrian safety crossing, but what we're wondering is if the board would give permission for the letter to FDOT that just says, hey, could we look at something that's maybe not so large and big? Maybe, is there an alternative, since we now have this new regulation, an alternative to this safety crossing that's not so, I guess, visual?
And for the members, you have at your, it's actually at your place, the letter, and
Yeah.
on the back is the legislation, so it's not actually in your agenda package.
So we're not asking for it not to be a safety crossing, just a different kind of look.
Is this the one in South Melbourne Beach?
It is, down by the
Okay, 'cause
New England Eatery down there.
Being there, I have clients, it's tax season, so I get a lot of things.
Yeah.
They do not want it all. And they have the other thing they talk about is, what about, because it's so bright, is when the turtles things, that's what I've heard.
Please tell me if I'm talking out of turn here, but I believe that they did address the lighting for the turtles
Yes.
in this, and we obviously want
Yes,
them to
they
continue
did,
to do that.
But I know that nobody wants it down there. They're very unhappy with it. So it's not the first time I've heard it.
Yeah.
It's tax season, so everybody comes into my office and
Yeah.
tells me their problems.
I would just really like the opportunity for it to be maybe revisited, just so it's maybe not so glaring and so out of place now that we have this new legislation. So,
And that's what you're asking us for. You're only asking, it says this request is for a reevaluation. That's all
Correct.
you're asking
That is
for at
correct.
this time. That's
Yep.
all. All right, thank you. And
thank you.
do we need a vote on this?
I don't necessarily know that we need a vote, but are the members okay with the chair signing the letter and sending it to Secretary Tyler?
Any objections?
Any objections, yes.
All right, thank you very much.
you.
I'll take care of this after the meeting.
Thank you.
All right, were there any questions for Mr. Coppernoll regarding FDOT? Yes, Ms. Mimi Hanley.
192. I have, like I said, it's tax season, and I'm an accountant. Everybody comes in, and they do not like 192. It is the people that are in constructions, that have pulled trailers, they're not, and not only that, a lot of people, because it's been so narrowed, and it's so narrowed that they're afraid to go on it. And I think we're causing businesses to be affected by this, because a lot of people are going, if they can go from Babcock, they'll go down to Hibiscus and go that way, or go around, keep going around. So they're not going on 192. That's going to affect the small businesses along 192. when you have when you're having constituents not using that road because they're afraid of it, that's a problem, and that's a main thoroughfare. And a lot of them are, and the construction guys don't like it because they're holding on for dear life. They're afraid of anybody doing a quick stop or anything like that, that their trailers are going to be moving and that they're going to be in a bad accident. There's no wiggle room there. That's, I mean, you know, you're looking at 6 feet on both sides. It's like somebody said, he goes, it's just not, everybody's holding their breath because they're waiting for the accident to happen.
Okay.
Chuck, I was hoping that Suzanne Phillips was going to be here so she could kind of discuss the actual construction, how far along are they, and what is actually being constructed, but I see that she wasn't able to make it today, I don't think, so.
Mr. Forrester?
Mr. Forrester?
I don't know, is this on?
Yes,
Okay.
it's on.
I'm feeling kind of contrary here today because this issue is something that this board has been talking about for 6, 7, 8 years that I know of that I've been here, about the road narrowing, the lane diets, the one thing or another. And there have been objections by this board every time it's brought up. We've never said, oh, yeah, that sounds like a great idea, let's do that. And yet it keeps happening. And I'm not clear, maybe I'm not clear of what exactly our position here is in all of this. But when we oppose something as consistently as lane diets have been opposed by this agency, and they're still being put in, I don't understand.
Madam Chair, if I may.
Yes, Georgiana.
So I think what we're planning to do for the April meeting, for the March meeting, is to have Lorene Bobo with the DOT Safety Office to come in and talk about some of these countermeasures that the department is incorporating, you know, whether, you know, it be something as extreme as a roundabout to the narrowing of lanes and, pedestrian crosswalks and all of that. We also want our consultant to present on the high injury network and kind of talk about really where some of the problems are here in Brevard County. I will just say that it's not just the DOT that is approving these type of things. Brevard County and some of the cities have also, when they do resurfacing, they narrow the lanes to try and slow traffic down. So this is not something new that's just indicative of DOT. But to your point, I think that we do need an education. We need to kind of understand what's being looked at, why it's being looked at. Is it across the board? Is it a case-by-case basis, which I believe it is? I think it would be very helpful. And to not have just a blanket statement that under no circumstances would you not narrow a 12-foot lane if you're trying to solve a problem. So if we could definitely hold any sort of debate until March, I think it would be really good to hear from the engineers, because Lorene is an engineer, and kind of understand. But Lorene is an engineer, but she's also coming from a different perspective as well. Because she does hear the human side of things, and for those people that have really lost their lives on our roadways. So that's my thoughts. It's about balance in everything that we do. But I think March will be a very informative meeting, and then we can kind of dig into that conversation. And you can be, cantankerous at that meeting too. We appreciate it.
Well, I think a big part of my concern is that I don't feel like this group is being listened to outside of this room. And I would like to see a little more change in that, whether it's from the cities or from the county or from the state. I'm pretty sure we're not narrowing any lanes in Rockledge. So I'll be quiet and wait a couple of months. See what
Thank
I
you,
can stir up then. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Forrester. I'm sorry, I cannot read your nameplate from here.
Mayor Keith Capizzi from Cocoa Beach.
Thank you.
Yeah, we've got a similar issue in Cocoa Beach. Highway A1A in Cocoa Beach is a highway, although now we've got crosswalks every 4 blocks, and in the more downtown area, every 2 blocks. But on top of that, they're wanting to put, I think it was 4-inch speed bumps on the crosswalks as well. And we've got a lot of residents that are complaining that they don't want the crosswalks. Us as city commission also complain that we do not want the raised crosswalks. And they haven't began them yet, but it's in the plans. Also, they are narrowing the lanes as well from 12 to 11 feet, and they want to put signs in the middle of the lanes and the roads, which I'm completely against. If we've got larger trucks like ambulances and stuff like that, there's a potential for harming the people in the vehicles, as well as people not used to it, jumping the crosswalks. So if at all possible, I would like to at least stop the raised crosswalks, and also stop these signs in the middle of the road. Those are just going to be something that vehicles are going to hit. They're in Satellite Beach, and they're an absolute pain. You see they're always marked up or bent over. I just don't want it in Cocoa Beach. Another thing is we wanted all our crosswalks to be uniform so that everybody knows that, hey, they know what to expect every single time. We've got 3-4 different crosswalks in our city. Let's just keep them all uniform. So those are my concerns about A1A. If anything, if you didn't hear anything else, please just don't put the raised crosswalks. You know, that's our main concern.
Yep. The mayor is referring to the speed table
Right.
for that particular crosswalk.
Thank you. Any other comments? Mr. Connors?
Thank you very much. I think the challenge that we have is, let's say we have this discussion next month. You guys explain to us in perfect detail why this is needed and all the data that supports it, and we understand it and we all agree. Challenge is now you put that burden of us to educate all of our constituents that don't understand it. I get calls and texts and emails flooded about State Road 405 blaming me when it's not us, right? And I think we're all busy enough where we can't do a PR campaign on behalf of FDOT. And so I think that's the challenge that we face, is educating our constituents of, let's say this does make the most sense, but how do we get that message out there? I was at a planning and vision team meeting last week, and they're like, oh, we can get safety enhancements funded. And I said, well, if you're going to do that, you better come with a kick-ass PR campaign, because I'm going to get killed, So we got to make sure that we're educating our constituents about why these things are necessary if we do go in that route. So those are my thoughts.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Any other questions? Mr. Feltner, Commissioner Feltner, sorry.
Thank you. And then Commissioner Altman wants to say something also. When I was a commissioner for just a couple of weeks before I found out that FDOT was planning a road diet on US 1 in Palm Shores. And I worked very hard, very fast to put an end to that. So my good advice to all of you is talk to your state legislators. They're the ones who ultimately control the purse strings. So FDOT's going to listen to them with maybe bigger ears. That's the first thing. As far as road diets in the future, lane diet is a little bit different thing. I think it would be a lot different in this state if they were forced to drag barrels out there for 6 months, put barrels for 6 months and say, lane removal study in progress, call your state representative. If they did that, this would never happen again. It would never, ever happen again. So with these different problems, you definitely, and legislative session starting the first week of March, so I'd encourage all of you to talk to your legislators, former legislators. Oh, that's what you were going to say? Okay.
Thank you. Mr. Altman,
Right.
did you want to speak?
Good. Did a good job.
He said it all for you. Thank you. Thank you, Commissioner Feltner. Any other Yes, sir. I'm sorry, I can't read your your name better either.
Mike Hammer, Palm Bay.
Thank you, Mike Hammer.
I have a question. Is this a good enough time to talk about Babcock Street, Palm Bay?
Well, this is about FDOT.
Okay. So with Palm Bay being the largest city in Brevard County, I feel like we're a little bit behind the pendulum. As of right now, I believe Babcock is in an emergency status. As of right now, we're going to have close to 10,000 more residents put on the Babcock. Babcock's not even on our, thank you. And Babcock's not even on our long-term ideas for our future. The problem with that is I was told it is too expensive, and I get that. But part of our progress is me going and trying to sell Babcock. How can I sell it if I get an okay, but it's not even on our list? So I need to figure out a way to get some kind of amendment to get it on there, because there's no use me going forward if I can't do anything with it. Secondly, in Palm Bay, it's the largest, like I said, it's the largest city in Palm Bay. We do not have a 4-lane road that's completely 4-lane road end to end. That's our city roads, county roads. Any road in Palm Bay is not 4-lane end to end. We have 145,000 residents right now. I believe we're bending the capacity outside of anything we can tolerate. And in the next probably 3 to 5 years, we're going to be within 170,000 people in Palm Bay if all the permits get approved and things get built. I think at this moment we need to look at what we're doing and bring some things to Palm Bay, because I think we're coming into an emergency situation that we're not going to be able to fix.
Yeah.
So I just want to let that be out there, and I am letting everybody know that's my priority moving forward. You're going to hear about it every single meeting we have. This is something that we need to act on, and I've made trips to DC to talk to people and get money and get help. I've spent my own money to do it. I'm not having taxpayers or the city pay for it each time. It's something I'm doing myself. If I could take this little bit of money that I have, this little bit of time away from my family, away from the citizens of Palm Bay, I think everybody that is around me can help me out just a little bit. I need something, please.
Madam
Thank you, Mr.
Chair,
Hammer. Yes, Ms.
if I may, Mr. Hammer, you're absolutely right. You know, Palm Bay being the largest city within Brevard County, I will tell you South Babcock is number 2 on the TPO's priority list from the St. John's Heritage Parkway to Malabar. And the only number 1 priority above that is Malabar West in the city of Palm Bay. Those are the 2 roads that are the most congested, that we get the most cars, most calls on, but they're off the state highway system. But we still have them at the very top of the list because we know they need to be federalized.
Well, it's
So
not on our long range when you look at everything.
it is in the long-range transportation plan on the needs list, or it's actually in the cost feasible.
It's
Yeah.
not south. It's only north of Malabar Road.
So the way it's listed, well, I don't have it in front of me, so I apologize, but I can guarantee you on the 2050 needs list that I presented last month or December, 100% it's on there. And would you like?
Well, I mean,
Here,
there's no reason why we couldn't even have it on our priority list if it's not
Yeah,
in the long-range
it-
plan.
I
So
can
it has
guarantee you
to
it is
be.
100%
Now, when I
on
look
there.
at it, it's from Malabar North. Malabar South is not addressed.
There's both the state road portion as well as also, I'd be happy to
Yeah, if
pull
you
it
could
up.
give me a
or-
copy of that, I'd
or-
really
Yes,
appreciate
yes,
it.
sir.
Not
I
now,
will,
but.
yeah, I'll
just
email
as
it
soon
to
as
you.
can.
Yeah, yeah.
Sarah, would you
that's-
quickly share
Yes,
the latest meeting, which I think Mr.
So,
Hammer would be interested in?
Yes, I think that this will make you very happy. Is on, I believe it was Tuesday, we met with the City of Palm Bay staff, as well as also Brevard County staff to discuss this exact problem. It was one of the most productive 30-minute meetings I've ever been in. And basically, we have made the decision to segment out that whole project and really focus in on Mico to Mar-a-Loma, which from my understanding is where a lot of that development is coming in, and really pursuing getting it funded within the 2050 cost feasible plan. And so we are definitely looking at it, and we're definitely trying to move it forward, and we hear you guys that it's a major need.
And in the interim, the Brevard
Oh, yes, thank
County is going to do a fairly timely feasibility study to look at the intersections to see what,
Specifically Eldron,
Yes.
Eldron.
yes, to see how they can move forward and move into design pretty quickly to at least give some relief in the short term. Because you're right, these widening projects, the challenge is that they're off the state highway system. But even with that being said, the department is struggling with state funds. So our state projects aren't moving on the priority list either. But there's a lot more state money than there is federal money. So it is a challenge, but we understand how important South Babcock is.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I just think we should have things extremely listed, because I think among this new group of people that's in here, we have extremely motivated people now.
Sure.
We have extremely vocal people.
Yeah.
And we have people that are going to come forward and try to do things, because we have people that we have to answer to, because our word means something now.
Sure.
So I think I think we have a motivated team, and I think we need to push some things a little harder, because I know I am, and I know a lot of other people in this room are as well. So that's all I have to say.
Thank you very much, Mr. Hammer. Any other comments? Yes, Commissioner
Delaney.
I can read that. Katie was all I could come to my head. So
I know,
yes,
it's okay.
Commissioner Delaney, thank you.
I just wanted to kind of piggyback off of what Councilmember Hammer was talking about. While I understand that, dollars are always the problem, Brevard County is extremely special, not only because of our geographic issues, but, we have our national defense, our space center, all of these things, and we really need some special attention from the state. We have to be able to keep up. We're not going to be able to totally keep up, but we have to be able to do something when it comes to the growth that we're experiencing, and it's not going to slow down, and we're expected to perform at levels that are so high without much support, it sounds like, from the state. And it's, we need some special attention. So, and you do a great job, and it's you can only do so much in your capacity. And I was speaking with Secretary Tyler, he came to my office and we talked, and it was, we need a bulldog. We need somebody who's willing to go up and, I'm willing to do it. I know Councilmember Hammer, most of these people around this table, we've got some pretty strong personalities. And so, but what we want to do is work with our state legislature, work with our state leadership, and, get to a really great place. But we need some participation. So I just wanted to throw that out there.
Thank you, Commissioner Delaney. And any other comments before we get to consent agenda? Going once, going twice. Sold. Thank you very much, Mr. Cupnall. Very good report. Thank you. All right, we'll move on to the consent agenda. And it's Part A and Part B. Are we going to do both A and B under one, or are we going to do them separately?
Yes, they can be approved in one motion.
One motion, all right. Consent agenda, please read the consent agenda aloud for the record.
The TPO Governing Board meeting minutes of December the 12th, and we do have committee appointments as well.
All right, thank you. Can I get a motion and a... All right, motion Blake, second. Thank you, Smith. Blake, motion Blake, second Smith. All those in favor of approving the consent agenda signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Thank you. Motion carries. Thank you very much. We'll move on to the next item, which is item 5, action items, approval of resolution 21-11 Federal Highway Administration performance measures. Sarah. This is on page 54.
Thank you. All right, good afternoon again. Sarah Crom. So this is ultimately an administrative item where in 2012, the Moving Ahead of Progress Act which authorizes federal surface transportation funds, basically put in place that TPOs and DOTs would be monitoring their system via certain performance measures. And those are safety, bridge and pavement, and system performance. And so annually, we have to adopt our safety performance measure, as well as also if there's any changes in PM2 or 3, which is bridge and pavement and system performance by FDOT, we have to decide if we're going to support the DOT or create our own. And they did update theirs over the summer. So I do have a short presentation just to brief you on the history and such of this. And those slides can be found on page 64 if you want to follow along. And so why are performance measures beneficial? Why should we be looking at them? They help us monitor our transportation system, and specifically we're monitoring, as I mentioned, safety, performance, maintenance and operations. They provide a database decision-making tool, and so by monitoring it, we can see, all right, we need to focus more on our resurfacings, we need to focus more on bridge condition or such. They help us assess the effectiveness and efficiency of the projects that we're delivering, and they also help us be accountable and transparent to our citizens and visitors. They are federally required via MAP 21 and the FAST Act, and they are required, as I mentioned, for the state TPOs, as well as also public transportation providers have their own set of performance measures as well that we also have to approve and adopt. So we have been, we started doing performance measures before performance measures were a thing. We've been monitoring performance of our system through our State of the System report. Excuse me. And we first adopted our federally required performance measures in 2018. Ever since then, we have consistently decided to support the state's performance measure targets for consistency across our network. And so, as I mentioned, FDOT updated their targets in November 2024, and staff would recommend to continue to support FDOT's targets. The targets can be found as Attachment A to Resolution 25-11, which is on 57. There is very, very minor changes. Basically, there was 3 changes. The first one is the National Highway System bridges by deck area. And basically, FDOT is saying 10% is too high. We want to, have even less of a poor condition. So moving in that direction of providing a better deck area. Also, the percent of person miles traveled on the non-interstate National Highway System that are reliable. They're moving that up to 60, so they're saying we want to be more reliable. And then truck travel time reliability from 1.75 to 2, once again saying we want to be more reliable. So with that, I'd like to request a motion to approve Resolution 25-11, Federal Highway Administration Performance Measures, PM 1, 2, and 3 targets.
I'm looking for a motion, please. Motion, Mr. Alleman. And a second, Blake. Alderman Blake. Thank you. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, say nay. Motion carries. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Sarah. All right, the next item is on the TIP Improvement Program. Georgiana, and this will be a roll call.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair.
67, page 67.
Yes, thank you. And the project is also, you can look at page 70. This is the letter from DOT. This is a TIP amendment that the department requested. This particular project was initially an interchange project at I-95 and Malabar Road, and the project scope has really been expanded to be a full corridor study or PD&E study from I-95, basically from the Parkway to just north of Fisk, over 37 miles, but it includes the interchange at Malabar Road as well. This is a section of I-95 that is showing a lot of congestion. It just seems like not too long ago that the department finished the 6-laning of I-95, and now we're looking at the potential 8-laning of I-95 within this section. Now, of course, this is the very initial stage. This is the PD&E, the big environmental study. But still, it is important, and then the department will also be looking at very focused improvements at I-95 and Malabar. So we are asking for approval of this TIP amendment. It's in the DOT work program, but we need to incorporate it into our transportation improvement program.
All right, thank you. I'm looking for a motion for the approval.
So moved, ma'am.
Motion, Mr. Blake, I'm sorry, Mayor Blake. And,
Like a motorcycle, it's fine.
okay, second? Is there, I'm sorry, second, Mr. Connors, thank you. Mayor Connors, thank you very much. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye. I'm sorry, this is a roll call vote. I just said that, I knew this. All right, thank you. Zoe?
Okay. Atkinson? Altman?
Yes.
Allender? Blake?
Yes.
Capizzi?
Aye.
Cole? Yes. Connors? Delaney?
Yes.
Feltner? Forrester?
Yes.
Hammer?
Yes.
Hanley?
Yes.
Jaffe?
Yes.
Smith?
Aye.
Young?
Yes.
Did I miss any voting members, not including alternates? Okay.
All right, motion carries. Thank you very much. All right, next
Thank
item.
you.
Thank you. Next item is item C. This is approval for permission to execute the Railroad Crossing Elimination Grant Program Award Documents, Agreements, and Consultant Support on page 72. Mr. Dana?
Yes, members, this is just really a housekeeping item. As you all know, the TPO submitted the Railroad Crossing Elimination Grant to put in safety enhancements at 7 railway crossings within Brevard County, which would help seal the corridor and stop people from illegally maneuvering around the gates and moving in front of the Bright Line train. So what we are asking, as this is new to us in working with the Federal Highway Administration in this capacity, but we will have to develop various agreements between the Federal Highway, Bright Line, the local governments that are involved in this grant. And it may be a short process or it may be a long process, but we would like the authority for me to execute those agreements. Of course, everything that I do will be brought back to the board for ratification to make sure you know what has happened. But it would be a way of just making sure that we're not behind the 8 ball. So we are asking for authorization for me to execute any agreements that may be needed.
All right, thank you. Mr. Forrester, did you want to make the motion or you have a question?
I have a comment on this item, and this is more in regards to how we do this. But I was on US 1 the other day and turning right on Eyster in Rockledge. And just as I made the turn, there's a long turn lane there. For those of you who are not familiar with it, there's a real long turn lane, and then bang, there's the crossing. Just as I went into the corner, the gate came down. I missed it by about 8 inches because it literally dropped in front of me. There had been no, the way that's designed, I double checked to make sure, but there's no signal light, no warning, anything back in the turn lane. So until you're in the turn, there's no indication that there's a train coming. And then the gate, I mean, it literally dropped in front of me. I was going a pretty good clip, but I did manage to stop, and
Scared
it caught my attention.
Yes.
I did not want to get the hood of my truck crashed in by a
Mr.
crossing
Forrester,
gate.
I know you mentioned that before, and we had DOT take a look at that because there are, I believe there's cameras there. And they discovered a potential issue with the signal, not the signal of the crossing, but the actual traffic signal there at Eyster and US 1. So they were going to take a look at that, and I think they were tweaking that. That maybe, I don't know, but we will share that with them.
Because I
And-
suspect that that's happening at other
Yeah,
intersections as well, where there's no warning for people who are turning right onto the into the
Yeah,
crossing.
that is tricky. Okay, we will share that with them. Thank you.
You know, maybe a light coming up to the intersection in the turn lane or something.
Okay. All right.
I thank you. Are there any other comments before we call for the motion, or would someone like to make the motion?
I'll move to approve the motion.
All right, thank you. Motion, Mr. Forrester, to approve, and is there a second? Thank you very, thank you very much. I couldn't see who was speaking there. Almond, thank you. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed? Motion carries. All right, thank you very much. And we'll move on to the next item. We'll move into presentations. Page 67, member orientation, Georgiana.
All right, this is mine, and it's a little long, but I promise I will move super quick as I can. You know, for many of you veterans here, this is going to be old information, but for the new members, you know, this is something that is potentially may be new that you were not aware of. So this is the agenda, and again, we will kind of move through it fairly quickly. As I talk about this, you know, we are a transportation planning organization. I know I was talking about that with Mr. Altman because he remembers when we were an MPO, the Brevard Metropolitan Planning Organization, and we changed our name because, you know, we thought, okay, we're on the Space Coast and we do something with transportation, but an MPO and a TPO means the exact same thing, and you will, all over Florida, you will see TPAs, transportation planning organizations or associations, or MPOs, Metropolitan Planning Organization, means the exact same thing. So understanding the origin is really crucial for comprehending your role in this federal system. And, you know, in the early 20th century, the goals were to connect farms to markets and really create better roads for cars. But by 1944, Congress and the administration agreed upon really the general outline for a national highway program that would connect all the major cities in the country. And the most critical change in federal policy that really launched a lot of spending was the emergence of the Interstate Highway Program. And by the 1950s, conversations were to provide for national defense, promote commerce and trade, and job creation. And in 1956, a 41,000-mile system was approved. And Uncle Sam said, look, we need to dedicate revenue. And they collected federal fuel taxes and established what is known today as the Highway Trust Fund. And they wanted to ensure adequate funding. So coordination really began to become a very important issue. The federal government had no desire to construct it. They generated the revenue and they passed it to the states. They said to the state highway department, which is what it was called at that time, you figure out where the interstate is going to go and how to make it work. And the states got busy doing exactly that. And immediately there began to be problems. You know, the interstate system was passing over, through, and completely bypassed some cities, and folks were not happy at all. The state road departments, by and large, did not invite cities to the planning table. And so everyone was really trying to figure out how to have a voice in the process. Now, this was an example of one of Miami's oldest and historic communities, Overtown, experienced neighborhood bulldozing from the construction of I-95 in the 60s. And, you know, it displaced about 12,000 residents, and this was originally a community settled by American railroad workers for Henry Flagler. Transit services were predominantly privately owned and operated, but by mid-century, you know, transit was in very serious financial trouble due to the heavy marketing of the automobile. Vast sums of public money were being spent to provide road networks that would connect suburbs with their cars to cities. And when private providers sold out and went bankrupt, cities were faced with the unexpected responsibility of providing public transit service. So the cities had to step in to fill in that transit gap, but was really financially unprepared. But the first federal support for transit came with the Housing Act of 1961. And in that act, Congress came up with a concept that there should be a better process for planning activities. And we're sharing this piece of legislation with you because it continues to drive the transportation train today. In everything that we do, all transportation planning supported by the federal government uses the 3C process. continuous, comprehensive, and cooperative. And so when I say continuous, you don't put it on a shelf and forget about it. Circumstances change, needs change, but there ought to be an ongoing planning process. Comprehensive. Congress was already beginning to think about more than just roads and cars. You should be thinking about transportation as a comprehensive system of ways that things and people are moving around. And then cooperative. Congress said, we're hearing from the mayors and your council members and the county commissioners, and they don't like what you're doing. Can you just sit down and make nice with them? It was a request, but it really didn't have any teeth. And so, nevertheless, it's embedded in the planning model today. So every time the federal government engages in a major policy concern, it has ripple effects in everything the federal government does. And this particular photo was taken between 1955 and 61. It's Florida Governor Leroy Collins and President Eisenhower. And of course, the Civil Rights Act of 1964 and the National Environmental Policy Act. Both of these acts are embedded in the transportation planning process today. So the interstate program has been running for a dozen years or so. Congress is receiving an increasing number of complaints and different priorities. Congress really had enough. So in the reauthorization resulted the creation of MPOs by Congress. They mandated them. So this wasn't an option. Under federal law, urbanized areas, over 50,000 people, must have an MPO to oversee transportation planning. They also funded the planning activities for MPO. They took a percentage of the budget and allocated it to the MPOs for planning. That is how we are funded today. And on October 19th, 1977, the Brevard MPO was created. The creation of the MPOs in 1973 was very important, but Ice-T really changed the game. 18 years later, Congress is still hearing complaints. So Congress passed the Intermodal Surface Transportation Efficiency Act, it's called Ice-T, and they wrote into law the authority and the responsibility to craft long-range transportation plans. MPOs had to make decisions, and they had the authority to allocate federal funds. And it was really a watershed moment in transportation policy. The FAST Act of 2015 put an emphasis on performance measures and prioritized freight, as Sarah presented on our performance measures. And then that brings us to our most recent authorization, passed November of 2021, the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act. And this particular infrastructure bill goes into fiscal year 2026. I think there may be 16, 17 months left. And as you all know, there's a policy priority on EV charging networks, sustainability, resilience to changing climates, and more equitable transportation and safety. And of course, I will tell you that under the new administration, they are taking a look at even the discretionary grants in that infrastructure bill, and potentially taking a look at the notice of funding opportunities to see how they want to tweak that. So, every administration puts their stamp on what the priorities should be. So that is something that is being done today. So most of the language concerning MPO structure, authority, and responsibility is contained in 23 United States Code 134. Once an urbanized area reaches 200,000 or more, it becomes a transportation management area, and we are categorized as a TMA. We serve two urbanized areas, Palm Bay, Melbourne, and the Titusville urbanized area. And then there's a small area within the boundary in Brevard County called the Sebastian Vero Beach UAB. And because of this, we receive federal funds that you all have the authority to program on projects, on our priorities, and we must receive a federal certification. We're also required to consider all modes, not just surface transportation. And in Florida, MPOs operate in an environment established by a combination of federal and state legislation. So Chapter 339175, it describes our responsibilities very clearly. And the governor approves the membership plan for this MPO based on the latest census. So the allocation of our members is stipulated in federal law. So who is the Space Coast TPO? This is our mission, and our mission is to plan a transportation system that enhances quality of life and economic development by engaging the community. That's so important. And our vision is to provide a safe, multimodal, innovative, and resilient transportation system. The transportation improvement program that we approve every year, that brings our vision to life. So the projects in that transportation improvement program should be getting us to that goal. And so you all know we're unique. We have an array of modes that are used to provide mobility and serve the economic and social needs of the region. We have no decision-making power over our modal agencies or other transportation agencies. However, we are responsible for ensuring safe, efficient access to those systems. So things to consider in your role, the influence of each mode really transcends jurisdictional boundaries. The example is that the growth of the port leads to the need for the beach line to be widened. So someone needs to be looking at the big picture, coordinating and planning among the modes, because you all know roads don't stop at the city limits, and our citizens do not care who owns the road. They just want to get to where they're going in a reasonable, safe, dependable time. And so it's critical that we view transportation holistically and that we talk to each other about how to improve it, and that is what this forum is for. And even when they're difficult conversations, like we had earlier, our DOT partners, we appreciate them. We can't do anything without DOT. But we have to talk about it, and we have to talk about those issues. So we are organized by an interlocal agreement between Brevard's local governments, Port Canaveral, and the Florida Department of Transportation. We are an independent organization. We are not county employees. And we contract with the Board of County Commissioners for administrative support and benefits. We pay rent, and we are housed in the county building. But we really are an arm of Brevard County. We work very closely together. We provide services for them, and then they help provide services to us as well. The TPO here, this board approves more than $1 billion of federal and state transportation dollars to implement projects. Now that includes space, port, transit, resurfacing, capacity. It covers the whole rampant, but the point is that that's real money on real projects. And you are supported by our staff. We are small but mighty, and we know the rules very well, but you are the policymakers. You're in charge. You are the TPO. We're your staff, and we're here to support you and to help you. The governing board's responsibility is to determine transportation policy, develop transportation plans, and mutually agree on those federally funded projects to improve regional mobility in our county. And the board is really responsible for setting the overall framework for transportation decisions. Your job is to manage that 3C process that we talked about. The governing board's, sorry, I just went over that one. And so the governing board's strategic plan is a 3-year guiding document. It's due for an update, and we're going to be talking with you about that in April. We have 5 emphasis areas that we've been focusing on: safety, linking transportation with land use, sustainability and resiliency, and innovation. And of course, leadership, because you are our leaders, and it's all tied to the long-range transportation plan goals. But in April, we want to talk with you about maybe narrowing that down and get your input on what do we need to be focusing on, because we need your input on that. So the TPO Governing Board, as you may know, we have 4 advisory committees as part of our organizational structure, and Sunshine Law is applicable to all committees and the board. We have operating policies and procedures that outline the roles and the functions of the governing board and its committees. Florida law mandates a technical advisory committee, and it should be comprised of your planners, engineers, representatives from local aviation authorities, local ports, transit, and the school district. You know, they were selected to provide the technical input and to advise the governing board on various things that come up. And then the CAC is exactly the opposite. You know, this is where they come to express their opinion and state mandates that we have representation, for the entire geographic area. And this is a very crucial component for public involvement as well. We have a Bicycle Pedestrian Trails Advisory Committee. That is not mandated in state law, but we do have one, and they make recommendations to the committees and the board. And then the Transportation Disadvantaged Local Coordinating Board, that is a committee under the TPO, although Terry and his team really, they take care of the administration of that. And the purpose of the TDLCB is to evaluate service levels, safety, and other issues for transit operators provided by transit, serving elderly, people with disabilities, and disadvantaged citizens. And then kind of moving into our core products that you will be seeing throughout the year. And this is just kind of a relationship of all of those core products there. But the Unified Planning Work Program is the mechanism that we use to guide and fund the work that the TPO decides to embark on, and that is approved by this board. It's funded with federal highway and transit planning grants. And then the Long Range Transportation Plan is the foundation for all transportation decisions in the region. The Long Range Plan must provide a vision for the future of our metropolitan area. It must identify future transportation demand in that area and provide a framework for choosing transportation projects, at least to the extent that we can afford it, which is always the rub. If a major project does not appear in the cost feasible section of the long range plan, it cannot receive federal funding. It's as simple as that. The state requirements for the long range plan gives emphasis to the strategic intermodal system. It reflects the goals of Florida's transportation plan and be consistent with local comp plans as well. Again, regional planning. We also have to coordinate with other MPOs on facilities that crosses MPO boundaries. So again, the regional planning comes into play as well. And each year, the TPO solicits for new projects to be added to our priority list. This is one of the most significant tasks that we carry out. We have a transportation subcommittee, which is really an ad hoc committee, and they make recommendations on the ranking of that before we bring it to our committees and our board. But the list is organized by significance with a top priority on top. Only projects that qualify for state and federal funding are on that list. Local funds are the responsibility, clearly, of the local agency. And then we talked about the TIP. This is a program, a document that lists by phase for the next 5 years all the projects that will be implemented here in Brevard County. Again, it's $1.2 billion worth of projects in that transportation improvement program. And then the public participation plan, our last work product that is a requirement, it outlines how we interact with the public to gain input on various decisions. Our citizens have a part to play. And, you know, the TPO manages Facebook, LinkedIn, Nextdoor, YouTube. All the tools and strategies are outlined in this document. We want to get meaningful engagement on all of our documents, on all of our projects. That's very important to this process. And these are our resources that have been created to assist in making those transportation decisions and investments. Recently, we just updated our Vision Zero action plan, but these are all of the plans that are also a part of the long-range plan. So if there are projects identified in that plan, then potentially we can fund them because we have identified it and incorporated it into the long-range plan. And at the end of the day, data is critical. You have to follow the data. Monitoring the conditions is necessary to identify problems. That also kind of takes the politics out of it a little bit and provides cover for you all, because there's not enough money to go around, and we have to put the state and federal money where the problems are. Where's the need? Where's the highest need? But traffic counts are one of the primary data sources utilized for monitoring. We have traffic counts for over 500 locations. We update that every year. We have a traffic count database, and it is an interactive traffic count database online. We monitor conditions annually, also with our Vision Zero High Injury Network dashboard and our State of the System report. And these are projects in orbit. These are current studies that we have underway that have been identified in our Unified Planning Work Program that our staff and consultant is working on, that this governing board approved last year before we embarked on this. And so I just have one slide on funding because, you know, we could have a whole presentation regarding funding, and we don't have time to get into that. But, you know, you all know that funding is critical for us to be able to bring that vision to life. And unfortunately, our revenue has not kept up with the transportation demand, you know, whether it be more fuel-efficient cars, alternative or electric vehicles. Of course, we don't have a crystal ball. We don't know the situation with EVs. But I can tell you that, you know, the rising cost of right-of-way and construction and labor, the fact that the federal gas tax has not been raised since 1992, and for just a little bit of trivia, in 1992, Seinfeld and Home Improvement were the top two television shows. So that just tells you how long it's been since the federal gas tax has been raised. So what we get at the end of the day is a growing backlog of projects, and a longer time to complete those projects. So, you know, our citizens do not realize how expensive transportation is and how long it takes to implement these expensive projects. And then I'm coming to a close, I promise. Regional coordination, the Central Florida MPO Alliance, that meeting is tomorrow, and we have three of our members, new members that are going to be attending. And that is where the 6 MPOs get together to really kind of talk about similar issues. We need good regional connectivity for tourism, goods movement, and access to our Orlando area facilities. You know, one of the most significant things we do is we adopt a regional prioritized project list every year, and we will be adopting that tomorrow. We did not have a quorum last year, and I will be presenting on that because, again, it's made up of MPOs, so we all work together. And, you know, we cannot stay in our little Brevard bubble. We're all connected, and we need to know what each other's doing and what projects are being funded, and really talk about how we can move things forward. That only helps us here in Brevard. And then the statewide Metropolitan Planning Organization Advisory Committee, the MPOAC. It's where the 27 MPOs get together again. We meet quarterly, just like the Alliance. That was established by the legislature to enhance the role of MPOs. You know, there's a reason why Florida, you know, has one of the best transportation systems in the country. And it is because, you know, we invest in our transportation. and of the working relationship that the FDOT and the MPOs have. It is truly the reason why we have one of the best transportation systems in Florida. Okay, and then as we come to a close here, just general member information. Zoe is our board services administrator, and so she does a fabulous job for us. So, you know, as you review your agenda packages, if you have any questions, you know, just let us know. Please sign in when you're here. If you cannot attend a meeting, please contact your alternate. And the member roster and email addresses can be found on our website, spacecoasttpo.com. Check your official city or county email for updates in case there's a hurricane and we have to cancel a meeting, and you know, you just never know. And if that is not your email address that you use, please let Zoe know so we can just keep in touch with you. Also, the TAC, CAC, and TPO meetings are streamed live on YouTube and Facebook as well. And the agenda format. The responsibility for each item is listed on the item sheet, and the strategic plan emphasis area for that item is listed on the cover page of each one of the item sheets for each agenda item. So you can get in touch with them. Of course, you all know you can call me anytime. And there is the item sheet. And also, agendas are distributed via email and posted on the website. And you can find them in the Agenda Center. And so that really ends it, you know. Be an advocate. Of course, help educate our citizens. It is not lost on me. I know what the Mayor Connors said is that you all have a tough job. You know, again, there are times when you have to be an educator, a negotiator, advocate for a project. I mean, we're here to help. We're here to provide as much cover as we can, and I know that the department is as well. I think Secretary Tyler would be more than happy to have the opportunity to kind of help bridge that gap and have those conversations, because at the end of the day, we all want the same thing. You know, we want to improve our transportation system, and we have to collaborate, and we have to do it together. But you definitely have an opportunity to do some great things here, and we're just so appreciative of your time. And Madam Chair, I'm going to stop talking and shut up and be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Georgiana. Mr. Smith. I'm sorry, Commissioner Smith.
Councilman, but I will receive that.
Councilman Smith.
Great presentation. Two questions for you. One question, I'm looking at a letter that we have for the Citizens Advisory Committee. I just want to understand what is the role of that Citizens Advisory Committee as it relates to the presentation.
The Citizens Advisory Committee meets at the same time that the Technical Advisory Committee meets, which is kind of unusual. So it works great for us here in Brevard. They really feed off each other. So this whole room is basically full. And so they hear all of the agenda items at the exact same time. They take two different motions. We have two chairs, the TAC chair and the CAC chair that sits right here. And so the citizens provides the citizen input. And so that's very important, and it is under state law that we have a Citizens Advisory Committee.
Okay, and then my final question, as Sarah was presenting her topic, she talked about town hall meetings, or there was going to be interaction with outside citizens, and I would like to see if there's a way to, if we can have a list of all of those so we can try to encourage more citizens to be involved.
Yes. Okay, the Get Involved Gazette, yes, we will, that is a very good point. We need to share with you so you can share with other folks. So we do have some tools, but we will definitely keep in mind and make sure that we get that in your hands.
Because in everything that we talk about, I think it's important that even if we cannot fix everyone's problem, at the very least, if we give them awareness, they feel like they're a part of the process, you know, and that helps. So.
Very good. I appreciate that.
Thank you, Mayor Keith.
Yeah, just a procedural question, I guess. So we've got a big issue in Cocoa Beach where we have a lot of e-bikes and bicycle pedestrians. A lot of our sidewalks and roadsides, the bike lanes are only 4 feet, 3 feet. How would we go about advocating to get those widened to maybe 6 feet or I guess, at what point or how do we go about trying to get that changed?
What's that? Yes, so we have a bicycle pedestrian master plan, which identifies all of the gaps and the potential needs. When we do our call for projects, that is it's your staff that is actually putting together projects to submit to us for future funding. And so, it's important that, and all your staff is invited to the Transportation Subcommittee. We have a representative from every city, in fact, more than one representative. So we talk about that. And so that's really the first step. We need to get it incorporated into the bicycle pedestrian master plan, which we can amend it if it's not already in there. In other words, if a sidewalk exists, you just want it to make it wider.
Yeah.
We can certainly do that. The challenge is there's a lot of areas that have zero sidewalk.
Yeah.
That folks are struggling to try and get something. But just to make it wider, it is a need. I totally understand that, but
For Cocoa Beach, we have, millions of visitors a year, and even just
Sure.
our downtown corridor, when you've got e-bikes that go 52 miles an hour and a pedestrian, I would love to be able to try to make that safer
Sure.
for them. So I don't know, maybe I'll get with you afterwards to figure out how to get on that. I would love to do that. And then also a question about beautification on roadsides or medians. For example, like our 520 corridor or A1A corridor is extremely unkept looking. So I wasn't sure also how would I advocate or what avenue I'd go to try to get that moving forward.
So I was under the impression that the beautification program, the department would pay for that. It's a very simple application, but that the maintenance responsibility was that of the local government. So I don't know if that's the case within Cocoa Beach, but I thought that was always the case. But is it just the shrubberies need to be maintained, not necessarily new shrubberies?
The shrubs are, there's pretty much non-existent.
Okay.
There's really nothing there. It's, maybe, 20 years ago, there was shrubs there, but, since then, eventually stuff dies off and it's just sticks and stuff sticking up.
Okay. Well, let's talk afterwards then, absolutely, and I'll get the information on those two items, and then we will go. Thank you.
And you can't make the lanes narrower while they're widening the sidewalk.
No.
Mayor Connors?
I agree.
Oh.
I just wanted to thank the TPO because it is through the advocacy here that helped push forward, the study for 405 to look at expanding that. So the advocacy does work. It's just trying to figure out how we communicate that to our residents so that they're better informed as we move forward. Because unfortunately, people, if they don't know, will assume the worst.
Yes. Thank you. Any other comments for Georgiana?
Great presentation.
Great presentation.
Well, thank you.
Very informative.
It was long.
Commissioner Delaney?
I just had a question about when we were talking about the funding, so for instance, the design for, say, 524, we talked about this a little bit, $7 million plus. How do we know that that's like a reasonable amount of money? You know what I mean? Like, who sets that price? And when I see at the federal level, we have, some major, cutting going on for out of control spending. It's like, what's the metric? Like, why is a design project for 3 miles of road $7 million?
Good point. I think the department, maybe Chuck can get better information on that because I won't do it justice by answering that question. South Babcock, the design for South Babcock is 18 million. That was how many years ago? And we don't have 18 million in
Right.
federal money.
Right.
So, which is the reason why I think cutting it up is the smartest thing to do, so we could try and get it funded.
Well, it's not so much my question of, like, give us more money. My question is, how do we push back against the engineering companies charging this kind of, it feels like price gouging the government. And when our dollars come from the people, that's.
Yeah, I think the department tries to stay on top of what the market is bearing, and I know for the construction of Ellis, they actually, sharpened their pencils and tried to do everything they can, actually engaged in another contractor to see what the market was bearing throughout, because they are starting to see construction prices come down. And my apologies, I know Kathy can be the one to probably answer this question. So I'll stop talking. She probably can.
Jordana does a great job.
She does.
Kathy Alexander Corbin, Program Management Administrator at District 5. So appreciate the opportunity to come here. Certainly, construction costs on the rise. Our design costs are on the rise as well. There's the increases on survey efforts, drainage, just all of the assessments that goes into it. I understand.
But I'm sorry to interrupt you, but like, what about I get the construction costs, physical things cost money, but this is just brain power here.
There's a lot that goes into the brain power when you have to go out there and do field verification.
Right.
And technology is a huge part of it, and technology we know has a significant cost.
Okay.
So there's definitely, survey is no longer just going out there with a tripod, right, and just measuring. Right. We now have digital tools. We now use 3D modeling. There's a cost, clearly. It cuts down on the evaluation and the assessment. AI helps with reducing some of that, but it's still a cost to be able to gather that information, to be able to validate the current conditions, so then you can then come and figure out what you're designing. But we have the same concerns too. Right. They go hand in hand. Construction costs go up, design goes up. And we meet with our ACEC, which are consulting engineer partners. I think they do it monthly or quarterly. I'm looking at Chuck, somebody can help me out. They meet with them regularly. We talk about these things. We talk about the cost rising and what are ways that we can actually do engineering cheaper and smarter, but without sacrificing what we're trying to figure out for our projects. So it's definitely a discussion that's had between the industry and the department. But we recognize it is our cost. I remember we used to do what we call an existing conditions report for a resurfacing project. It was almost like a scoping document, and it could have cost $50,000 just to do that a few years back. We're now at $150,000, $200,000 for that assessment. Sometimes even more than that, depending on the location, for just a resurfacing project.
And so you're telling me that the technology is the reason for the.
I'm not blaming one item. I'm just saying it's a collaborative effort when you're trying to do design and you need to validate and confirm what existing conditions.
Right.
It's definitely the cost of engineers, rising cost of inflation for their services. It's a combination of things. It's not just one, but certainly I know survey is one that has gone up significantly for us in the department in the last few years, and that is a technology-driven effort.
It's just hard to explain to our residents when they see these prices and these costs, and they look to, trust the engineers, trust the engineering, and then they end up with flooding, they end up with all of these things surrounding, and then everybody puts their hands up and says, oh, no, it wasn't our design. And we look around, especially, I'm sorry, in North Brevard, we have so many flooding issues. And it's not just the roads, it's a lot of things. But, at some point, we all got to put our heads together and say, okay, what we're doing isn't working, and the pricing of everything, all of these things. And so I'm just, verbalizing that, so maybe we as a group can kind of like
Absolutely.
keep this conversation going and figuring
Absolutely.
out a solution for it.
There's
Thank you.
definitely the mechanisms there to continue the conversation.
Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Delaney. Commissioner Feltman.
Could I just say one thing to that, that I've come to appreciate being a commissioner? I seem to have meetings every week with our own county staff where we're talking about how complicated things are getting because of other things under the roadway. So more plumbing, more things to move, more utilities. Fiber optic there's more of that in Brevard. Yes, you mentioned drainage and all those things. So it's not just as simple as go out there and lay asphalt. And so I think all of those things combined is what's increasing the engineering cost.
Thank you, Mr. Feltner. I'm sorry, Commissioner Feltner. Thank you. Would you like to do your presentation while you're there?
Sure.
Since you're the next. So Kathy's presentation is from FDOT, and it's a Turnpike Enterprise Tentative Work Program. Thank you.
Okay. And just to confirm, do we have the information in front of everybody, right? The
From
packet
page
does include-
77.
Okay, good. All right, well, thank you so much. I'm here to present our tentative work program, and just as a recap, what that is the process, the annual process that we go through to allocating funding priorities to the transportation needs in the upcoming 5 years for our region. So we're talking about fiscal year 26 through fiscal year 30, and that represents July 1st of 2025, I'm sorry for a second, blanked out, until June 30th of 2030. We build the work program in collaboration with the local communities, our MPO, TPO partners, transit partners as well, federal and state agencies, as well as any other regional stakeholders. And what it represents is planning activities, design, engineering, construction, maintenance, operations, right-of-way, anything that is related to a project in the upcoming 5 years is included in the work program. What you're seeing in the slide here are the key milestone dates to getting our tentative work program through review, approval, and adoption. Each district develops their own tentative work program for the region, and this then is shared with the public. We held our work program public hearing in December. We had a 1-week window. It's still up and available, and if you feel free, you can go out there and review for the area, and if you have any comments, you can reach out to me in the contact that's at the end of the presentation. But it was put out for public consumption and for commenting in December. On January 15th, all the districts submitted their tentative work program to our executive office, our FDOT secretary, and that had its own formal executive review last week. It's now going to make it to the Florida Transportation Commission. So all the districts are combined and it becomes this tentative statewide work program plan, and it'll be reviewed by the Florida Transportation Commission before it is submitted to our governor, executive office. It'll be reviewed through the legislature. Ultimately, it'll be approved and it's adopted July 1st. And that is when we begin executing the plan. We build the program based on the state investment priorities that you see here. We have safety programs that have to be included in our upcoming work program. That is first and foremost. That does not mean that we don't include safety across the board. That is also included of all of our projects. The next priority is maintenance and preservation of our assets, and this is state highway systems in terms of roadway pavement conditions, our bridges to make sure that they're repaired or rehab, replaced as they see fit, and also just facilities along the state highway system. So system preservation is the next priority. Next, we have statutory requirements. We're required to put funding on public transportation such as aviation, transit, and rail and ports. Each year, as we program these priorities, we also take into account cost increases to projects that are already in our work program. So we also have to include those cost estimate increases or decreases or adjustments into the plan in order to be able to balance. So what ends up happening, once we have all those things complete, what is left over is what you consider discretionary funding or funding that is left for our work program. And that allows for adding new projects into the work program, into our tentative. You can see when you have high cost increases and a lot of needs, your discretionary funding is decreased. Inversely, if those costs are regulated or they go down and your needs go down, then you have more discretionary funding. We can add new projects into the work program. But we have to build a program that is balanced against federal and state funds. We also have to make sure that we take into account any changes that come out of the Florida Revenue Estimating Conference. They're basically the ones that set what our revenues and allocations will be to support the plan. And we also have to include those program area targets. This could be the system preservation and maintenance items that I mentioned previously. So from the revenue and allocation, from the Revenue Estimating Conference this year, we didn't anticipate that we would have excess of revenues. We actually expected them to be pretty conservative given what we've been coming out in the last few years with high inflation and high interest, and lots of cost variability across the board for our projects. So we did have a slight uptick for our rental car surcharge projections. It was very small, and that was reflected in our statutory formula for the district. However, our state funds were decreased due to the reduction in those revenue projections. So what came out of the Revenue Estimating Conference is that they forecasted a reduction of $127 million, which is slightly less than 0.5% for the 5-year work program for the State Transportation Trust Fund. And what they're expecting is a deceleration of economic growth of 2.1% and 1.9% over the current and the next fiscal year as we stabilize coming out of the last couple of years of lots of variability. Next, we have decisions that come out of our legislature. So we have legislative changes that could require funding that now needs to be redirected to those decisions that were made in the previous session. And we also have any kind of policies or departmental decisions that are made. We meet every spring. All the districts get together along with our executive office to discuss what are our jurisdictional needs and statewide needs across the state. And this last spring, there were some key areas that we realized need some funding. We have bridges, significantly large bridges, expensive bridges that are going to need some repairs in the upcoming year. We have rest areas that need to be renovated and improved. There's also our technology that is used in the intelligent transportation systems. There's upkeep for software and resources for that that's going to be needed in the next few years. And then we have several of our what we call ancillary structures, or mast arms, sign structures that are nearing the end of their service life that are going to have to be either repaired or replaced in the upcoming 5 years. So we had to reallocate funding that was previously under a resurfacing program into these upcoming needs, statewide critical needs. The reason for that is because it maintains our roadways operable and ensures the public safety. And the last one here, I don't think this is much of a surprise to anyone, kind of been discussed. We've seen the economic variables that's reflected in the cost of our projects. These are the 3 major work groups that we basically include in most of our projects. And what you're seeing here is the price difference percentage between a 12-month period. This is the end of fiscal year 24, which was July, to the previous fiscal year 23. And earthwork went up 131.5%. We had traffic signals, 26%. Asphalt, 5%. That is just a 1-year period. I see some familiar faces. You may recall the last year I shared a table that had a cost model for a 1-mile resurfacing, 4-lane divided flush shoulders. And between 22 and 23, that 1-mile section went up 26% for the resurfacing effort. Between 23 and 24, that went up another 8%. Now, what we're happy about is that as we pull that cost model right now, we're halfway through fiscal year 25, which is our current year, and we actually saw that decrease by 3%. And we're seeing that with our projects at the district. I think we're geographically benefiting here in Central Florida, where we have a good turnout of contractors for our projects. We get about 3.5% response for each of our projects, which is really good with help regulating some of that cost. And we're seeing that so far with our current year lettings. They're actually coming in lower, especially for our resurfacing projects, lower than we were estimating. So that's a great thing. But when you look at the average, it's been 17.5% each year for the last 3 years. And in 2021, for that 1-mile section, the cost was $751,000. Right now, fiscal year 25, a little past halfway through the year, we're at $1.2 million. That's 55% over in cost for that 1-mile section from our lowest point back in 21. So we're hoping that this trend continues for the upcoming year with the remainder of our lettings and really helps out, with the industry, with construction and transportation industry, with bringing down some of these costs. So this creates a challenge then when we have to put everything together and balance, and we had to focus on some key objectives. Again, we have to make sure that we're balanced to available federal and state funds. So there were some key areas that we focused on. First and foremost, maintenance and preservation of our assets. Again, we're focusing on state highway pavements, we're focusing on our bridges, we're making sure that our sign structures are solid, we're making sure that our rest areas are taken care of. We have to. These, again, are all things that are required by statute. We limited the programming to estimate updates on projects that were already within our work program. This meant that we limited any new projects coming in because we have to make sure we deliver on those that were already committed. We did have minimal programming on new items, but these were program target areas that we have to program, like resurfacing and our bridge repairs. And also for projects that maybe had, eligible specific funding. So we have funding that's associated to certain type of improvement, and we could introduce those projects in the work program because we have to use that funding for those type of projects. This could be like our resiliency funding. It could be transportation alternative funding for pedestrians and sidewalks and bike trails. It could also be safety funding. So these were eligible specific projects that were added into the work program. We leveraged all available funding sources towards the delivery of these key regional projects. Again, looking to see what applies and putting that in the project. So several of our projects have several mixes of funding sources because we really dug in to see where we could spend these sources. We also wanted to make sure that we were creating and conserving responsible contingency and reserve levels for the upcoming 5 years. Clearly, it's been very volatile in the last couple of years, and we want to make sure that we're ready in case there's any weird swings left or right. We're hoping not, but you never know. So we have to make sure that we have funding there available for these projects that are planned. And the last, we do this every year, and we don't like deferrals. We don't like to impact project schedules. We definitely don't want to prolong a benefit that's going to, serve the public a lot sooner, but sometimes it does happen. And we did have a couple deferrals that I'll be mentioning later. Here you see the breakdown of the funding for Brevard County, and it's $1.2 billion. A breakdown by the work type, as you're looking here, is that we have capacity. This would be adding lanes. We have close to $102 million there. The bulk of that is Ellis. I'm very glad that that is fully funded in the upcoming year. It's fiscal year 26. And then we also have right-of-way for 528 that's included for capacity project. Preservation, again, this is our resurfacing, our bridges, anything that's maintaining our state highway systems. Multimodal includes your space, aviation, seaport, freight, transit, and rail. You see operations as well as bike, ped safety improvements, and miscellaneous. Miscellaneous is anything that's not in those preceding descriptions. It could be rest area, truck parking, it could be isolated improvements, anything else. Again, I'm not going to discuss all the projects in the work program. That's impossible in a 15, 20-minute period. I don't have that long anyway. But feel free to go out to the website, gather the information. If you have questions, you can reach out to me. I'm going to go ahead and cover the items that are new and the changes from the previous work program. First, for systems preservation is resurfacing. We have over 59 miles of resurfacing a state highway within Brevard County. There's 14 miles for arterial and 46 miles of interstate resurfacing along I-95. These are projects that are programmed in the upcoming 5 years, and they'll be in design in the first year, which is 26, with construction in the third year. There's usually a 2-year production period for those. For pedestrian and bike safety improvements, we have one that's going in along A1A at Atlantic Boulevard. This is going to be a pedestrian refuge on the north leg of that intersection. This is within the Indian Harbor Beach. Again, this was very specialized funding. It's transportation alternative. It's intended for this type of a project. Operations, on the left-hand side here, it's Malabar Road from St. John's Heritage Parkway to San Felipe Boulevard. This is a Space Coast TPO project funded. It is with local programs with Palm Bay, and it's improving the intelligent transportation communication system. For landscaping along State Road 501, Clear Lake, we have landscaping and construction occurring in 26, which is the first year of the upcoming work program. This is actually a project that's going to follow a resurfacing project that we have coming up. That resurfacing project will be complete, and then the landscape will come in. And we do have funding for landscaping, so maybe after you all talk to Jenna, let me know, and I can follow up with that at the department. All right, airport, very significant mode of transportation for us here. I'm not going to go over all of them. What you're seeing here is $9.25 million of new funding. This is not all the funding, this is new funding this cycle for the airports that you see listed here for operational and preservation projects. We have a preservation, again, this is going back to maintaining our system, State Road 401, northbound, southbound bridge over Barge Canal. This is electrical and mechanical improvements on that bridge. And then on the right-hand side, you see an improvement for Seaport, maintenance dredging, with 4.3 million, close to that, represented in the work program. Rest area improvements, here you have several of them on Mims and Palm Bay, northbound and southbound. They're going to be resurfacing the parking lots as well as doing improvements to the pavilions. And then here's another one that's specialized funding. Here we have a resiliency project. This is protect funding that came out of the IIJA. We're going to be doing, we're going to be fixing up US 1, the shoreline failure from Nelson Avenue to Laurie Street. This is going to be seawall repair, and this is in Melbourne. I mentioned the deferrals, sometimes it happens. I mentioned we had adjustments to the resurfacing program with lane miles that were adjusted. We were reduced for the district. The first one that you see here is a project that was deferred. It went from 26 to 28. The project will still continue. Payments in good condition. It can withstand that delay. On the bottom, we see the 507 Babcock Street. This is a safety project. The construction on that was deferred from 26 to 28. Safety is it's a safety program, has its own funding. Unfortunately, they did not have the capacity to keep this one, so that's why that moved, but it's still within the work program. Sometimes things happen from one year to another. We did have the Cocoa multimodal station with a change there. It's deleted administratively, but what happened there was just the funding just moved from design to construction. So the project is still will still continue on. A couple of deleted projects, another administrative one is the top one. We have the -2 project. This project was originally Brevard County with delivery by the county. We had to sunset that FM number, that -2 sequence. We created a new one, a -4. So that's why this shows up as deletion. The project is carrying on. Like I mentioned, it's fully funded in 26. We had a bike path trail project, a Space Coast Trail that you see there, that was deleted due to coordination with the stakeholder. And then we had a Safe Routes to School project, Harbor City Elementary School. This was a sidewalk construction where it was coordinated with the local agency to go ahead and delete that project, and in the future they may reapply for that sidewalk construction. Georgiana mentioned briefly the grants we have here for information. Clearly, this was before the executive memo came out from the presidential office, but we do want to put this out here, grants, discretionary grants, in pursuit of those. There's been success in gaining those in the past and getting those awarded, so we just put it out here for information. We have somebody at the DOT that serves as a point of contact for information if interested in reaching out about possibly pursuing a discretionary grant with an FDOT support letter. It definitely helps, for projects that are having a difficult time finding funding through the work program. We could skip the video if you like, for the sake of time. I will say that I apologize. We would have been here in December. We like to get out here and do the presentation right as soon as we get done building it and balancing the plan. But unfortunately, we had hurricanes and storms, and many of us were out helping out our operations partners doing flagging through the whole month of December, and so it was impossible to get out here, but we're glad we're here now. So I appreciate everybody's efforts to getting us back on track. And with that, I'll take any questions.
Thank you. Any?
Madam Chair.
Yes.
Smart.
Quick question, Kathy. The letter of consistency from DOT, I noticed that the department doesn't provide that letter very often. In other words, when we go after a discretionary grant, and I wonder, I'm just curious. I know that the department is also applying for discretionary grants as well, but it would be very helpful if the department up in Tallahassee could support the MPOs when they're going after a discretionary grant, to be able to provide a letter of consistency with the DOT work program. And I noticed that doesn't happen a lot.
Okay.
Any idea?
I could definitely take it back to Alice. She's probably the best person. I'm sure there's some
I've
kind
talked
of.
to Alice.
It depends on the project, and I'm sure what the caveats are around the project. I've seen the support letters. I know we had them. I think for Ellis, we actually provided.
I
the
got
support.
one for Ellis, yes.
Yeah.
And-
So I would have to refer to Alice, and then, and the Plimo group, they're the ones that manage it. There's got to be some kind of review as to what does and doesn't.
Yes, it just would be helpful.
Yes, it would.
We need all the help we can get up in DC, because Florida, as we know, does not do well with these discretionary grants. Hopefully that will change under this new administration. So,
Certainly, the larger the project, the more competitive it gets, so.
very competitive.
Thank you. Any comments for Kathy? Any questions or comments on the report before we move on to the next item? Thank you very much, Kathy. It was an
Thank you,
excellent
Kathy.
report. Thank you. All right, that brings us to 2024 Public Participation Plan Measurements of Effectiveness. Abby, it's on page 98.
Oh, COC's coming.
I'm
Part
sorry.
2.
I'm sorry, part 2. We're not quite finished with this yet. COC?
Good afternoon, board members. Part 2 of the work program. Thank you for the opportunity to present the Turnpike's Tentative Work Program for fiscal years 2026 through fiscal year 2030. In Brevard County, the enterprise is proposing to fund over $21 million in major projects. So as part of the Florida Department of Transportation, the Florida's Turnpike Enterprise considers the 5 pillars of the FDOT compass when developing our work program. Those 5 pillars are safety, resiliency, supporting a robust supply chain, technology, workforce development, and this all supports our communities. To help meet the state's transportation needs, the enterprise primarily receives funding through user tolls as well as concessions at our service plaza that are located on our Turnpike main line. The Turnpike must pay for operations and maintenance costs first. This includes the cost to collect and process toll payments. Then we invest revenue into renewal and replacement projects. So those are resurfacing projects or any reoccurring improvements on our roadways. And then finally, the enterprise uses the remaining funds to pay for capital improvement projects. So those are interchange projects, our widening projects, our roadway expansion projects. So before I talk some more about the work program, I would like to update you on the status of the Turnpike Widening Infrastructure Initiative. This initiative aims to widen the Turnpike main line to at least 6 lanes, and that's going all the way from Miami to the terminus at I-75 in Wildwood. So this initiative will relieve congestion, improve emergency evacuation, enhance connectivity, incorporate safety improvements, and improve travel experience for our roadway users. So Florida's Turnpike system consists of limited access facilities and provides Florida's residents and visitors with a safe, efficient, and affordable means of travel. Turnpike facilities are in all 7 FDOT districts and are in 21 counties in the state of Florida. In Brevard County, we have 22 miles of existing Turnpike managed toll facilities. So this presentation I'm giving is actually based on a blue document. It should be in your packets on page 82. So this blue document is actually our District 5 Tentative Work Program Summary. So for the Turnpike, this is all our projects in District 5, Orange, Osceola, Seminole, of course, Brevard County, Lake and Sumter counties. But this document is a lot better when it comes to projects. I'm giving you an abbreviated presentation about this document, but I would implore you to actually read this document because, it's more information. This document is broken up into 3 parts. So on page 1, you'll see that there's this first table. These are our current construction projects, projects that are currently under construction or will be under construction in the current fiscal year. Then, starting on pages, or going from pages 4 through 11, these are considered our main table projects. So these projects actually have construction within the 5 years of the work program. And then finally, on pages 15 and 16, those are our projects that have PD&E, design, and right-of-way funding, but do not have construction funding. The reason why this table is important is because these are projects that you can look forward to having in the work program when they get that construction funding associated with them. So let's talk about those projects that have construction funding associated with the projects within the 5-year work program. The first project that we have in Brevard County is the resurfacing of State Road 407 from State Road 528 to I-9. This project has construction funded in fiscal year 2027. The second project is the resurfacing of State Road 407 from I-95 to State Road 405. This project has construction funded in fiscal year 2027. So those are our two primary projects that we have in the tentative work program. So for more information on all projects in the Turnpike's tentative work program, you can visit the FDOT work program public hearing website and download the District 5 public hearing report. Turnpike's tentative work program projects can also be found on our website, floridasturnpike.com. And before I go, I'd like to share with you a safety minute. The Florida's move over law requires you to move over a lane when you see a stopped law enforcement, emergency, sanitation, utility, tow truck, construction vehicle with warning lights on, or any disabled vehicle on the side of the road. If you can't move over, slow down. So slow down to less than 20 miles per hour under the posted speed limit. And if the speed limit is 20 miles per hour, slow down to 5 miles per hour. But with that being said, that is the end of my report. If there are any questions or concerns, I will take those now.
Thank you, Sayose. Any questions or concerns? All right, thank you. This was an excellent report. Thank you very much for the information.
Thank you.
All right, now we'll move on to the next item, Public Participation Plan. Abby, on page 98.
Good afternoon. First, I'd just like to say thank you for hanging on. We're almost there. And this is the fun part. So many of our board members today talked about public participation and the community has a voice. And so I just want to make sure that, we are talking about our measures of effectiveness today. So this is a report that we produce every year to kind of talk back about what we are doing as far as it relates to our public participation plan. So it's really important that we are tracking and measuring how we are reaching the public and the community. So this is very different from our public participation plan that, as Georgiana mentioned earlier, that's actually a document that's required and mandated. And so as we track public participation, we have different methods in how we do that. So up here on the screen, you can see that we have face-to-face and virtual meetings and workshops, and it's really changed over the course of time because, of course, COVID introduced this virtual element that now all of our community members kind of anticipate now. It's kind of an expectation. And so when we're looking at our public events and our symposiums and things of that nature, it's really important. Even our meetings like today, we have to have that virtual component, and they're expected to have it. I'm so sorry, give me 1 second. My tablet just died. And when it comes to public participation tools, we have different ways that we do that. So through newsletters or email campaigns, social media, of course, is a huge one. Our website and also surveys are very important to get that feedback. And of course, we always make sure that we are engaging with our underserved populations. We understand that not everyone has access to the same information when it comes to public engagement. And so here's just a very brief list of some of the organizations that we work with to make sure that every plan, program, and project, we have kind of marching orders of where we are supposed to go out in the community and make sure that they have the same access to information that others do online. And so if we're looking at our public participation methods and goals, so this is more of a qualitative, not a quantitative tool, because our programs and plans, they change every year. So some years we have more public participation if we're having, a slew of workshops versus, a year that we might not have as many. So up here, you can see kind of our target goal and where we are year over year. And by and large, our numbers will fluctuate a little bit here and there, but I think what really speaks volumes, if you're looking at our outreach events, trainings, and speaking engagements, we're going out into the community, and that's what matters. We can't expect the community to come to us. We need to be in their backyards, at their events, and making sure that we are hearing from the citizens of who it affects. So year over year, we continue to be out in the community more, and we're very unique at TPO that we actually have a designated position for community engagement, and that position and I work hand in hand to make sure that we're out in the community and sharing not only our mission, but making sure that the public knows that they have a voice in transportation planning. And so this is just kind of a visual of that. We work with our municipal partners, health partners, our modal partners. We are a very small team, so it takes a village to make sure that we're spreading the word about safety. And so this is just kind of a visual of that. Okay, so social media, so just to wake the room up, but raise your hand if you use social media, whether that's Facebook, LinkedIn. Come on, I know you're all on it. Okay, there you go. So just for point of reference, what I think is really interesting about social media is whether your agency has it or not, a government office is really important to have a presence on social media because they're talking about us whether we know it or not. So engaging in that conversation and making sure it's a two-way dialogue is very important. And so, so many people use it, and they're not only using one platform, which is really interesting. They're using 6 to 7 at one time. And so we're not going to go through the report, but one thing I did want to bring to the board's attention is this past year we did make the choice to discontinue the use of X, or Twitter as it was known. This has become a platform that just doesn't have as much engagement on it, and also you have to pay for analytics now. And so some of our emergency partners are still on there because it is where the media is, but many government organizations are beginning to leave the platform just because we're not seeing the level of engagement that we once were. So again, this is kind of just now the measures of effectiveness of all of our tools. So you can kind of see some of our rates when it comes to our email platforms that we use for our newsletters, press releases, things like that. Our social media ones that kind of speak for themselves. Facebook tends to be kind of where everyone's audience is still, but LinkedIn has become an incredible resource for us, especially during COVID. People started to integrate their real lives and their professional lives. So we have a lot of partners on there. We share not only things about our staff, but the projects and plans that we're doing, and see great engagement on there. And then, of course, I'd be remiss if we didn't mention our news media partners, because I really think our relationship with the media in general has improved year over year. And your media relationships, as you all know, you're in government, can work for or against you, right? So one thing I wanted to bring to this board's attention, because we brought it last year, we actually partnered with Florida Today on a transportation safety series of 15 articles that really raised awareness of our organization and different elements of traffic safety. And so we continue to have some really great features. And then we're continuing to build our brand by creating our own materials. For many years, we shared FDOT's materials, and although they're a good partner of ours, we really wanted to say who we are, and so we'll get to that here in a minute. But these are just some of the examples of things that we created last year for our long-range transportation plan to tell our story, and then kind of continued on how to get involved. And then also this is a piece that we actually used at our workshops last year, our 4 workshops that we had for our long-range plan, to make people feel like it was an active, hands-on experience at those workshops. Little passport. So I'm going to pause for one quick second, and then we'll end with the annual report.
All right, thank you. Thank you. All right, the annual report on page 115, Amy.
And I'll be real quick. So before you try to open it, because this is an experience, every year we try to produce an annual report, and this one is very unique. We're going to post the digital one later today or tomorrow, but this one that you have at your seats, I'm just going to do a little show and tell here. So when you open it up, we have who we are, Georgina's message to the public, our last year's previous board, and key factors. When you open it up, this is the meat of what we did last year. So our long-range plan for public engagement and Vision Zero. As you open it up, we have more of the funding mechanism, so how many dollars we spent towards the different modes, projects on the horizon, and then of course shaping our station, which took a huge, good chunk of our time last year. And then when you fully open it up, it's now poster. And if I don't see this in every one of your offices, it's very lovely, and it really tells our story. And so we wanted to make this year's annual report, the physical part of it, also interactive. So very excited to have this tool now that we can give to chambers. Georgiana can have it as a companion piece when she goes out in the community for speaking engagements. So very excited to have this deliverable now. And that's it.
All right, thank you. Any comments or questions for this? Commissioner Altman.
Yes, thank you. I have a question. Now, our TPO, our Transportation Planning Organization, what's unique about Brevard is that we are multimodal. We include roads, ports, and space. Perhaps the social media platform that covers more space than any other platform is X. Why would we choose not to be a part of X that was very much involved in the launch business and very active here on the Space Coast?
Yeah, I mean, I think the reasoning that I found, and I consulted with other government partners too, and some are still staying there for emergency management situations, but the engagement that I was seeing on there from a public, I was looking at the public standpoint, it was a hard one to manage for me. And then I think the other component, not being able to access the analytics, because as this report kind of, outlines, to have a platform and then not to be able to kind of track that was hard for me, but still open, if we feel like it's a viable platform, and always open to any new platforms that would benefit the public and make sure we have our return on investment.
Yeah.
It's so synonymous with launching rockets. I would hope that we would be a part of it.
Yeah. Well, thank you for that. We will discuss that. We appreciate that feedback. I did not know that, really.
Yes, Mayor, thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Actually, I just wanted to piggyback on that as well. If you do look at your analytics chart, and you make an excellent point about that, not to mention that over half of the country backs our president and his decisions. Your impressions or your target was 100,000, and your last metrics was 141,000. So it just makes sense to continue, even if we do have to pay for metrics. I can't imagine them being invaluable. So I concur with that.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Commissioner Smith. I'm sorry, Councilman Smith.
Thank you. My question is, as far as partnerships, are there any strategic marketing partnerships with cities or other organizations to actually cross-reference and boost those numbers?
Yeah, absolutely. So anytime that we have a plan, project, program that's happening in a specific municipality, we make sure to reach out to the PIOs. I'm part of our public information network, so we try to cross-promote. A good example of that is right now with our Southern Brevard Trails Master Plan, working with the city of Palm Bay in the areas where it's going to affect. Have worked with the city of Melbourne in years past as well when we've had workshops and things of that nature, but we frequently work together in cross-promoting any activities if it regards like the public participation in those workshops or plans, programs.
EDC?
Yeah. Yeah, EDC, Office of Tourism, all of our law enforcement agencies, Chambers of Commerce. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right, thank you. Any other comments? Yes,
Sir? Go ahead.
Mayor.
No.
I just want to say, being a retired school teacher, thank you for the posters. Very educational and informative.
Thank you, Mayor Blake. Thank you.
Thank you.
One last thing on X. I mean,
Yeah.
not for nothing, the guy who's doing most of the launches in Brevard County is the owner of that platform. So just to piggyback on what Commissioner Altman was saying.
Thank you very much. Councilman Hammer.
Yeah, I just want to put out there too, to touch on X. A lot of times when you have partnerships with the chamber, with our municipalities, you're not getting analytics. So you're getting contact with people, whether they're engaging or not. It's a service that you can do. And for example, just some of the little things that I share on Twitter myself, I'm having congressmen, I'm having senators reach out to me personally. I mean, on my time in DC, I met up with almost 350 people in a number of days, just from people that we met off of X. So I think that's more of a political platform to reach the people that we need within what we need. Because right now, a lot of the things like just a great example, fluoride. This is just something that we discussed on Twitter. I had almost 13 different congressmen and congresswomen from around Florida shared on there as to where it got back to RFK. And that's something that was just you're not going to be able to see the analytics, but when a guy that's all over the world knows what I did because of X, it could be something that we bring from this platform on there, and even if one person sees it in the right place, it's not about how many views you get, it's the quality of what you're getting. And I think the quality right there, it's the science is merging to there right now.
Yeah.
That's where everybody's at right now.
Yeah.
I think that's extremely important.
Madam
to
Chair.
take into account. Just because you can't see the results, it doesn't mean they're not happening.
Yeah.
Thank you.
This is the
Thank
second largest impressions on this entire list.
Yeah, and I'd just like to say, for the good of the group, it's still, I can't access like what I did last year, so that would be very helpful, going forward to make sure. And just for historical purposes, for our organization, absolutely, like having the partners on there has been helpful. But how we were using it, I just want to be mindful of how we were using it as an organization was like during real-time events. Like that was when we would get the most engagement. Walk and roll to school day, great example. Tagging Brevard Public Schools and things like that. So I see the benefit, and it's definitely something that we can continue to speak about, and that comes from the powers that be for our organization.
No, and I appreciate that because I really did not think of it in the terms, we're thinking about it from engaging the public, but at the same time, we are living in a world of advocacy and getting our message to the right people, and so I appreciate that. And so the world has changed, right?
And one thing I would add to that too is the Nextdoor app.
Oh, we're on there.
Absolutely huge right now. I just
Yes.
see it listed on there.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that's something that I would see, because there's
Yeah.
little things that I share and I'll get
Mm-hmm.
40, 50,000
Yeah.
impressions on it. And, that's huge. In a community of 143,000 people, I can put one thing on a little phone and 40,000 people see it. So just
Yeah.
because you're not seeing the results come in, it doesn't mean it's effective.
Thank you, Abby.
Yeah, of course.
And thank you very much. Anything else for the good of the order before I make my final comment here? Okay, I just wanted to say thank you. This is a great group. I'm so happy to see the participation of this board. Mr. Hammer, thank you for saying we are awake, we are alert, and we're watching. I appreciate that very much. And to have 4 of the 5 county commissioners here today, this was amazing. We were lucky to ever get 1. And now we had 4 out of 5, and most of them stayed for the entire meeting. This is wonderful. The mayors and the councilmen that have showed up and participated in this board, I just want to say thank you very, very much. It is greatly appreciated. Thank you. Anything else? Otherwise, our next meeting is March 13th, right here. And unless someone else has something to say, this meeting is adjourned. Thank you.
All right. Do a quick photo, and then I need to talk to the mayor.